Imagine the television cameras cutting to Geoff Salmons and Alan Hudson. They're standing over a free kick for Stoke City at Birmingham. The commentator thinks they're discussing tactics. Except, according to Hudson's later telling, they weren't. They were planning which pubs to visit that night and which nightclub to finish in. Then Salmons delivered the ball. Jimmy Greenhoff scored. You could apparently plan a night out and create a goal in the same conversation. That was football in Geoff Salmons' era. But behind that funny story is a player football rarely talks about anymore.
A little touch off by Hudson for Salmons to have a crack at goal. Lifted it, in fact, Salmons still having a go at it. Oh, it's there!
Salmons made
Geoff
449 Football League appearances. He became an established First Division player, yet somehow, his name gradually slipped into the background. Those who watched him haven't forgotten. Sheffield United supporters still describe him as underrated, powerful, and exciting. Some were devastated when he left Bramall Lane. One fan even remembered rating him above Tony Curry at the time. And lifelong Blade Paul Heaton named Salmons as his football hero. He had pace, strength, and could attack dangerously from the left. Even his long throw became a weapon. This wasn't a player forgotten because he achieved nothing. He was forgotten despite what he achieved. And that's where the tragedy begins. The biggest opportunities of Salmons' career would come painfully close. Then circumstances would repeatedly change everything. Subscribe to remember Geoff Salmons, one of football's most overlooked greats. Because behind that funny story is a player football rarely talks about anymore. Long before the First Division crowds, Geoff Salmons was a boy from South Yorkshire. Born in Mexborough in 1948, he grew up where football was part of everyday life, and beside him was Frank Barlow. They played together as schoolboys. They attended Mexborough Grammar and represented local football. Soon, both were travelling to Sheffield United for evening training. No modern academy, no luxury facilities. Just two young players trying to earn their chance. In 1965, both signed schoolboy forms with Sheffield United. But getting through the door was only the beginning. Salmons wasn't an instant star. He had to earn his place. Under John Harris, he gradually developed into a powerful and dependable player. Then came 1970 to 71. Sheffield United were chasing promotion back to the First Division. Salmons became part of the side that delivered it. Years later, when asked about his most memorable match, he chose the 5-1 victory over Cardiff City during that promotion campaign. That answer says plenty. Those Sheffield years mattered deeply to him. And promotion wasn't the end. Salmons proved he belonged in the First Division. He became established. Supporters began seeing the player he could become. Everything seemed to be moving upward, until Sheffield United made a decision few supporters expected. Geoff Salmons was about to leave Bramall Lane, and the money behind that decision would remain disputed decades later. By 1974, Geoff Salmons was no longer a prospect. He had become an established Sheffield United player, with more than 200 appearances in all competitions. Then Stoke City came calling, and suddenly Salmons was gone. Even the exact transfer fee remains disputed. Some records put it at £160,000. Contemporary Sheffield material gives £180,000. Either way, it was serious money in 1974, and many supporters hated losing him. Fans later remembered being gutted by the sale. Some believed Sheffield United's financial pressures, including spending connected with ground development, played a major part. For supporters, that made the departure even harder to accept. Why lose an important player just as he had established himself? But this wasn't necessarily a move Salmons would regret. Stoke were building something ambitious. Tony Waddington had assembled a side capable of troubling England's best, and Salmons was walking straight into it. What looked like the painful end of his Sheffield United story was about to become the greatest opportunity of his career. The move to Stoke didn't bring Geoff Salmons down. At first, it took him closer to the top than ever before. Salmons joined a dressing room packed with quality. Alan Hudson, Jimmy Greenhoff, Geoff Hurst, Mike Pagic, Dennis Smith. Then came Peter Shilton for a world record fee for a goalkeeper. Salmons fitted straight in. During 1974 to 75, he played all 42 league matches and scored 8 league goals. And Stoke weren't merely having a good season, they were fighting for the title. At one stage, they reached the top of the First Division. Salmons was also experiencing European football. Stoke faced the mighty Ajax in the UEFA Cup and went out without losing either leg. Everything seemed to be building towards something special, but injuries began cutting through Waddington's squad. Key players disappeared at crucial moments. Still, with only 3 league matches remaining, Stoke had a genuine chance of becoming champions. They couldn't finish the job. Derby County took the title. Stoke finished 5th. The difference? Just 4 points. For Salmons, it was painfully close. A player who had left Bramall Lane only months earlier had almost become a champion of England, and there was every reason to believe Stoke might get another opportunity. They had the manager. They had the players. They had the ambition. What nobody could predict was that their greatest threat wouldn't come from another football team. It would come from above the stands of their own stadium. Stoke had already come painfully close to the title. But behind the ambition, finances were becoming increasingly tight. Then, in January 1976, something happened that nobody at the club could control. A violent storm struck Stoke-on-Trent. Powerful winds tore into the Victoria ground and badly damaged the Butler Street stand roof. The destruction was serious enough to force Stoke to play a home league match at Vale Park, home of their rivals Port Vale. The repair bill reached roughly £250,000. For a club already under financial pressure, it was devastating. Stoke needed money, and eventually, valuable players began leaving. Alan Hudson, Jimmy Greenhoff, Mike Payich, others followed. Piece by piece, the side that had come so close to becoming champions was being dismantled. Salmons remained, but the team around him was no longer the same. This wasn't a collapse caused by one bad performance or one terrible transfer. A freak event had struck a club already financially exposed, and the consequences spread directly onto the pitch. Only a short time earlier, Geoff Salmons had been chasing the championship. Now Stoke were heading somewhere nobody had expected. The decline was brutal. Only 2 seasons earlier, Stoke had been 4 points from becoming champions. Now they were fighting to stay in the First Division. The squad had lost important players. Tony Waddington's long reign came to an end. Yet Salmons continued playing regularly. He wasn't watching the collapse from the sidelines. He was living through it. Stoke fought until the end of the 1976-77 season. It wasn't enough. They were relegated by a single point. For Salmons, the contrast was extraordinary. 4 points from the title, then 1 point from survival. But football offered him an unexpected route back. Sheffield United. Salmons returned to Bramall Lane on loan. The club where he had grown up. The supporters who had hated seeing him leave. It could have been the perfect homecoming. Instead, it lasted only 5 league appearances. Then Salmons was gone again. Soon he joined Leicester City for around £45,000. And the struggle followed him. Leicester were relegated too. In only a few years, Salmons had gone from chasing England's biggest prize to experiencing consecutive battles at the other end of football. But one disappointment remained more personal than any relegation. Years earlier, Salmons had been asked about his greatest professional ambition. His answer had been simple, and it was an ambition he would never fulfill. During his playing days, Geoff Salmons was asked about his greatest professional ambition. His answer was simple: to play for England. It wasn't an unrealistic dream. Salmons had proven himself in the First Division. He had competed in Europe. He had been part of a Stoke side capable of challenging for the championship. But the England opportunity never arrived. Competition for places was fierce. Others attracted greater national attention. And Salmons remained outside the international picture. His journey then carried him to Chesterfield. This chapter lacked the glamour of a First Division title race, but it gave Salmons something valuable. He became an important figure for the club, making more than 150 competitive appearances. And in 1981, Chesterfield won the Anglo-Scottish Cup. After years of coming painfully close elsewhere, Salmons finally had a trophy to show for his efforts. There was also a familiar figure waiting in this chapter: Frank Barlow. The childhood friend who had travelled with Salmons to Sheffield United training was once again part of his football journey. By the early 1980s, however, first-team opportunities were becoming scarce. The player who had spent so many seasons performing every week was approaching the final stage of his league career. England had remained beyond his reach. The championship had slipped away. but Salmons had survived long enough to leave behind hundreds of appearances and memories across several clubs. And when the crowds eventually disappeared, his story didn't end. When Geoff Salmons left professional football, the spotlight faded quickly. Today, he is 78 years old, and football rarely talks about him. That is perhaps the tragedy. He played at the highest level. He came close to becoming a champion. He dreamed of England. Yet a remarkable career slowly slipped from wider memory. He achieved far too much to be remembered so little. Away from football, Salmons returned to South Yorkshire. Asked during his career about his greatest thrill, he didn't choose football. He chose becoming a father. He later entered the pub and hospitality trade and remained connected to his local community. In 2023, he attended the Totty Cup centenary event with his wife Val. His name also lives on through the Bramall Salmons shield. So Geoff Salmons was never completely forgotten. But a career this good deserved far greater recognition. A great footballer, a truly underrated career, and one of his generation's almost forgotten men. Subscribe, because a great career like Geoff Salmons should never disappear from football history.